G'day, Rockhound here! With Closed Beta 2 for the finals ending back on June 21, I wanted to make a video or two that dips into some of the things that the latest iteration of the game did really well, and some of the things where it maybe still needs a little more polish before early access or release. As part of Closed Beta 2, Embark Studios shared a 6-part series of podcasts called Meet the Makers, with each episode being a Q&A with a couple of the game's developers, artists, production team, and so on. If you haven't already, I suggest you check the series out on Spotify, and I've popped a link to it in the video description below for you. One of the Meet the Makers episodes featured technical animator Arvid Bergström and animation director Mikael Hogström, who answered questions about movement. So movement in the finals is what I'm going to look at in this video. Later in the video, I'm going to show you an in-game example where my super high New Zealand ping during the playtest might have actually given us some insight into some of the tricks that Embark use to try and hide server-side movement in the game. Firstly though, one of the things Arvid and Mikael said at the start of their episode is that they read everything on the finals Discord, which is great to hear. You gotta love developers who really take on board what their community is saying, and time again Embark impressed me with how they continue to do that. But what did they say about movement? Well, interestingly, but maybe not surprisingly, Mikael said movement was a big topic for us after Closed Beta 1. Going into CB1, I can be honest to say that we weren't maybe as ready with it as we wanted to be. So there were a few things that we knew was going to be standing out as not being perfect or polished. One of those things that was popping up a lot in the feedback was jumping and in-ear movement and traversing in general, like vaulting, stuff like that. So I would say that the biggest changes that we have made for, this test is to improve all of that. I think that Embark achieved that. Movement in this latest playtest did feel a lot better than Closed Beta 1, and that's taking into account that there was at least one major bug in CB1 that affected movement across the server, which got fixed. Embark Studios does have a unique approach that we should talk about though, and that's having destruction and movement largely done by the game server rather than client-side on your PC. This allows environmental destruction to play a much larger role in the gameplay compared to most shooters that include destruction. Tied to that, Mikael said that when it comes to all of the movement, it would be easiest to just send your input to the server and then wait for the round trip, and then you get the delayed response back, and then your character moves forward. But that's not really good enough. That was the jump feel from Closed Beta 1 that we've improved on for CB2. So the way our model works is that we, as much as possible, where we can, we sort of cheat a little bit. So we wait for that round trip from the server to get back to you, because then we can ensure that you stay in sync with the server as much as possible. We don't have to correct things or anything like that. And we have a couple of tricks up our sleeve that sort of hides this fact from you as much as possible. We can summarize like this. We run this thin prediction wrapper on top of our gameplay, and then we try and minimize the amount of prediction that we have as much as possible so that we can stay true to what the server is saying, because the server down the line is the truth of what's happening. Interestingly, they also said that with Arc Raiders being developed first, they had full server-side movement for that game, and that the third-person perspective for that game helped them make that work, but the first-person camera for the finals made it much more difficult. Anyhow, let's think about how that prediction wrapper might work, and then I'll give you a couple of examples of what I think happens in-game, including one that I recorded during Closed Beta 2 gameplay. Firstly though, let's talk about what the obvious problem is that Embark and all multiplayer game developers need to solve. With the speed of light being constant, unless all the players in the game and the server are hanging out in the same room together, #LAN party, there's always going to be some level of latency between the server and the players. That means that what the server presents to the player happened a short time ago on the server, and the inputs the player makes with their keyboard and mouse are a little old when they reach the server. So somewhere in the system, those differences need to be accounted for to ensure that as the player, we're happy enough with what we see our character doing and the outcomes that occur in those split-second gun battles, but also so the server is showing the same thing to everyone. That means that there has to be corrections made all the time, and the Embark team need to decide what the best compromise is. A way to demonstrate how I think some of their tricks might work to correct for latency while also having movement and destruction on the server so it's the same for everyone would be with this example where we have 2 players in one server. Let's use some completely made up player names. Rock the Darkness on the left here is riding down atop a piece of wall that's fallen from the upper floor of a building like an absolute boss. Nearby on the right over here is Bobby Chunderstorm, who is mindlessly jogging around and oblivious to his impending fate. In a display of unbelievable skill while falling, Rock the Darkness makes a sniper shot at Bobby Chunderstorm. The positions of the bullet sent by Rock the Darkness and Bobby Chunderstorm's unfortunate cranium at the exact moment that this masterful headshot is completed are predicted by the server, and instructions to show Bobby Chunderstorm getting turned into a jingling pile of 300 Swedish krona is sent back to both players. But what if, in the slight moment before the trigger was pulled, Rock the Darkness had a slightly off mouse movement? Maybe because his hand was really tired from signing so many autographs for his adoring fans, and the bullet arrives at Bobby Chunderstorm's head, but only just on target, and then a moment before the bullet arrives, old Bobby Chunderstorm here just randomly flails his mouse around enough to move his head outside of the bullet's path, which the server has already predicted. Well, the server could still conclude that the headshot landed because the last information it received allowed it to predict that with a high probability. And that was going to be the final outcome. It's unlikely either player would be able to perceive that it might have actually been a missed shot, but what they observed was Rock the Darkness descending perfectly on top of that falling wall and taking the shot, and Bobby Chunderstorm just running along in his normal wobbly fashion. In other words, the things the players needed to see to confirm to them that the outcome was a fantastic headshot was shown to them, and the slight mismovement that occurred at the last moment, which in reality actually ruined the shot, were swept under Embark's virtual rug by the server, with neither player ever being the slightest bit aware. It's a trick that's done for the sake of movement looking as accurate and as great as it should look, even if that movement is never actually going to be perfect, and depending on your preference, you can blame one of these four for that. The alternative would be to have the shot correct, but what we're shown is all slightly off, and who wants that? Let's now look at a real in-game example that I recorded. For me down here in New Zealand, if I play on a server in Europe, that round trip of information between my PC and the server takes about a third of a second. That's quite a substantial amount of time, and I think it's long enough to observe some of Embark's tricks coming undone a little. Here's an example on the Monaco map where I used a jump pad to move up onto the rooftops. Let's watch it in real time first, and then we'll step through it frame by frame.
I love how all the melee weapons have a secondary attack now.
B?
B. Yeah, I was like, I like how all the melee weapons have a secondary.
Now frame by frame. I place this jump pad, then jump on it, and you can see that I end up quite close to the right-hand roof, but I actually want to be on the left-hand one. So I start to turn towards that roof to correct my movement in that direction. But I haven't done quite enough to get me onto the roof, so I begin to fall back down past the edge of the roof. At this point, I'm spamming the spacebar to trigger a ledge grab. I've now fallen to the point where you would normally expect to see my character reach out and grab the roof edge, especially if the movement was done at my end, client side. But it's not, so the action has to be sent to the server in order for it to occur. At my end, I see my character continuing to fall towards the street. You can see here that I'm now well below the roof edge, and then from this frame onwards, the message has returned from the server that I actually made the ledge grab, so something magical starts to happen. I suddenly start to move back upwards, even though there is no animation to show my character grabbing the ledge. Watch where the roof on the right moves here. It moves down slightly, meaning that my character is moving upwards without an accompanying animation. The ledge grab animation then starts, and I get pulled up onto the roof. Let's watch it again at full speed.
I love how all the melee weapons have a
Where do we
secondary
go?
attack now.
B?
B. Yeah, I was like, I like how all the melee weapons have a
It's hard to tell, right? But in those few moments, it just looks like something quite floaty happens, like I hit a trampoline halfway down the wall. So Embark are probably cheating physics here so that the movement can be server-side. With my super high ping, I also notice it in other circumstances as well. For instance, I'll sometimes see the trace of a shot at me go to one side of me, but it registers as a hit. Or I'll fire a grappling hook at a window, but it actually attaches to the side of the building, and I hit the wall and fall to the street below instead of going through the window, which is kind of frustrating. But the one thing I notice the most is like that example we just watched where I jump between buildings and grab the edge of the roof I'm jumping towards, and I somehow seem to defy gravity to get onto it. And really, I've got nothing to complain about here. It's me that's playing with the high ping, and it's me that needs to deal with it. On that note though, I do hope that Embark don't put any ping limit in place for the finals in the way that Battlestate Games do for Escape from Tarkov, because I often play with friends who are in the eastern US or even in the UK, and that ping limit in Tarkov has completely ruled out me being able to play with them. I don't mind being on the suffering end of a high ping, but I think we should be able to play with whoever we want, even if it means that I get punished in-game for it with negative outcomes due to the high ping. Anyhow, I think overall, Closed Beta 2 for the finals saw some significant movement improvements, even for those of us with terrible pings. There was definitely more flexibility for character movement in the air, for instance, which I think is a really good thing. And it's pretty clear that the Embark team are going to continue to refine those movements as we approach whatever the next playtest is. Speaking of that, I'd actually love for Embark to announce the next playtest as the Gamma playtest. I mean, why wasn't Closed Beta 2 called that, I ask you? A seriously lost opportunity. I saw a lot of comments in the community in the finals Discord where they were really happy with the movement, but there's probably always going to be some room for polishing and improvements to movement here and there. There certainly weren't any major movement problems in Closed Beta 2 like there were in Closed Beta 1. For me, it's at the point now where I can't really tell if any lack of polish is just my high ping or where Embark need to do a little more work. And so I see no reasons to suggest that great movement isn't going to be a strong element of the game by the time it gets to some sort of early release or full release if they skip early access. What did you think about movement in Closed Beta 2? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching the video to the end. Subscribe if you'd like to see more content from my channel. Give a like or comment as you see fit and enjoy the rest of your day. Kia kaha, stay strong.
Everybody knows the world ain't right. Down on your knees, get up and fight.